Tom Caniglioli of one of the local hospitals is with us, and Tom, we have heard from firefighters that there are people who are still trapped inside the building, that rescue workers are having to crawl through the wreckage to try to reach those trapped people. What can you tell us about those efforts?
I do know that we have 2 different medical teams down there at the present time who are assisting the local ambulance crews. Those 2 teams have been held at the street and not permitted to enter the devastated area because of the possibility of more bombs being in the area. As soon as the clearance is given, those medical teams will enter the area. They will extract the most severely injured and transport them first.
So it's just the medical personnel who are being held back at this point? You haven't heard whether or not any of the emergency personnel or the rescue teams have been held back?
My understanding from the police department is that no one is being permitted to enter the structure. Now, we have also heard that we expect that restriction to be lifted reasonably soon, and I do not know what that means.
All right. It seems as though they make an initial thrust to go in, they find another explosive device, people back off. After that threat appears to be diffused, they go back in and they have found another explosive device, which I imagine is what is keeping people away from this area at this point, Mr. Caniglioli.
That is also my understanding.
Well, we'll get back to you then as your efforts continue to try to reach people who are trapped inside that building, and the good work that all of the people from the emergency services are doing to try to respond to this tragedy. On the phone with us now, Scott Pelley, CBS News correspondent out of our Dallas bureau, who just made it into Oklahoma City. What's happening on the ground, Scott?
Well, so far it's still pandemonium here, as you might imagine. You've seen the pictures, the building literally cut in half, the debris having fallen across the entire street. Apparently, most of the fires are out. There were many fires that were caused up and down the block in buildings and in many cars that just exploded from the force of the blast. The governor of Oklahoma, Frank Keating, has been on the scene. He says that there has been considerable loss of life, but he adds that we don't know what the facts are in terms of all of the people who have been killed or wounded in the explosion. Certainly, from what we've seen so far, there has been a large loss of life. Many people have been killed, obviously. Many more have been injured. We've seen many people with grievous wounds being treated on the streets there. Apparently, several children were wounded, perhaps even killed, from a daycare center that was housed on the 2nd floor of the building. The Oklahoma City Fire Department tells CBS News at this hour that they believe there are many people still trapped in the debris. They are working to find those people. There was the threat of a second bomb, which apparently has now been defused. A second bomb was found in the building on the other side of the building. Apparently that bomb has been defused, and rescue workers are able now to move back into the rubble and search for more people. There's a great deal that we do not know at this point, and the facts will develop as the day wears on.
Scott, we heard about the second bomb that had been defused, but we also got a report of a third bomb that has suspended rescue efforts in the immediate area. Do you know anything about that?
There's a bit of confusion on that point. I do not know conclusively whether there was a third bomb or not. We have confirmed from federal authorities who were at the scene that there was a second bomb and it was defused. Mm-hmm. The building housed the offices, the regional offices of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. There were 9 ATF agents in the building at the time. One of them has been wounded. We do not know how seriously. The other agents who were caught up in the bombing are now working the case, and they have determined, of course, as we know now, that it was a bomb. A second bomb was found, and there are reports of a third bomb. We don't have that confirmed.
All right, Scott, we just want to pass along some information coming to us from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, the ATF in Washington. The ATF confirming just moments ago that indeed it was a car bomb that was responsible for this explosion and the devastation in Oklahoma City. Scott, we've seen on the ground pictures of a car, the bent and twisted wreckage, the skeletal remains of a vehicle that may have either been caught in the explosion or may have been the source of the explosion. Has anybody there been talking about specific threats that might have been made either against any individual agency or just a shot at the federal government itself?
Well, the ATF has told me in the last few minutes that there was no warning before the blast that they are aware of, that they are not aware of any threats having been made, and according to the ATF at least, there have been no credible claims of responsibility for the blast. Many cars were destroyed down there, and I remember from covering the World Trade Center bombing in New York that a blast of this magnitude will mangle cars for quite some distance. So it's not yet known exactly what kind of vehicle the bomb was carried in. Obviously, it was a bomb of great power and great size, and at the moment they are thinking that it may have been carried in a truck.
Yeah, as we saw with the World Trade Center bombing, it was carried in a van. The van literally disintegrated. Some of the pieces, fortunately, of the vehicle that were left after the explosion led to the arrest of several of the people who were suspected to be involved. The car that we're looking at right now is the car that I was talking about. May not be mangled enough, in fact, to have been the source of the bomb, although we've seen, Scott, in many of the pictures coming out of Beirut that very often, depending on how the explosion actually emanates from the car, there can be a substantial portion of the vehicle that's left intact.
Well, that's right, and of course that's how they broke the World Trade Center bombing case, finding a piece of the vehicle that still had the registration number, and things followed pretty quickly then. We're getting a number of reports from people who were in the building at the time. One woman told the fire department that she had to crawl on her stomach and feel her way out, and she was talking to other victims as she was moving out of the building, people who were not able to get out, people who were trapped. The Oklahoma City Fire Department, again, is telling us that there are undoubtedly many people trapped. They fear that many of them may need urgent medical care, but because of this report of a third bomb, the rescue workers are not able to get in there to the extent that they would like at this moment.
Scott, back up for us, if you would, just a moment. You said that there reports of the second bomb, the one that was defused, were that it was inside the building, inside the south side of the building?
That is the report that I got from the ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. However, naturally, there's a great deal of confusion. A lot of this information isn't going to shake out in a credible way for several more hours. But that was the report that we got from the ATF.
You would imagine that if the initial explosion were caused by a car bomb, that a second device might be housed in the vehicle as well, as opposed to actually being placed inside the building. But at this point, as you said, you really can't tell. Does it look, Scott, as though we are going to see more seriously injured people being brought to local hospitals, or have the most seriously injured been evacuated and all that can be expected to be found really in the next little while are those who indeed were fatal victims of this explosion?
Difficult to say. The fire department is working under the assumption now that there are people alive in the building, and that is probably a pretty good bet. Even though in the pictures you've seen that half of the building has fallen completely into the street, the other half of the building is heavily damaged but still intact. And so the fire department believes there may be quite a few people in the part of the building that is still standing but was heavily damaged inside by the bomb.
Scott, as you know from being stationed in our Dallas bureau, it was 2 years ago on this day that the Branch Davidian compound burned down after the assault by the FBI. Some people have been speculating because the ATF is housed in the Murrah building here, and they were the ones who were involved in the initial raid on February 28th, 1993, that there might be some connection. But perhaps the method of delivery of the explosive device suggests other groups as opposed to Branch Davidians.
Well, no way to tell. Certainly the Branch Davidians were, even though stockpiling weapons and explosives at the time of the ATF raid over 2 years ago, they had never been known to carry out anything, any violent act of this magnitude or any violent act at all that I'm aware of. The anniversary of the fire of the Branch Davidian compound could be a coincidence, naturally. It's interesting to note that the agency that presided over the scene when the fire occurred was the FBI, and the FBI is not housed in this building. The FBI is housed several miles away in another building, so the FBI was not targeted. I have been by the office building that houses the FBI, and that building appears to have been evacuated. Automobiles are now blocking the entrances to the parking garage there, so obviously authorities are taking precautions precautions to make sure that there's not some attack on the FBI office.
Right. They are obviously considering that the possibility that there might be a present threat against some of these other agencies.
Well, that's exactly right, especially after finding more than one bomb. But again, with regard to who might have done this, it is all speculation at this point. There is the anniversary of the Branch Davidian fire to take into consideration. But on the other hand, there are Muslim fundamentalists on trial in the New York City area. That's another possibility. There are any number of possibilities and no indication that any particular group is responsible at this point.
And there have been a number of arrests both in Pakistan and in the Philippines of Muslim extremists who are suspected of terrorist threats against the United States. Most recently, a threat against 2 United Airlines jetliners that were to be landing in Southeast Asia. Scott, any possibility that these events could be connected? Is anybody talking anything dealing with that?
Well, certainly those are hot leads for investigators to look at, but there's just no indication at this early time as to who may be responsible. The building housed offices of the Internal Revenue Service. It's tax time. That's a theory that's out there right now. Also housed the offices of the Social Security Administration. In a building that holds as many federal offices as this one did, there could be any number of possible motives that one could imagine at this early time.
All right, Scott Pelley, CBS News correspondent. We'll cut you loose for a little while, let you gather some more information. We'll get back to you in a little while. Right now, we just want to go to a picture that we've shown you a couple of times and frame it in context for you. As the rescue efforts have been continuing at the Murrah building, here on the sky ladder that the fire department is using, you see a gentleman. This is Dr. Brian Espy. He's a veterinarian with the Department of Agriculture. He was with a number of his employees on the 7th floor of the building when the explosion happened. And he was interviewed by our local affiliate, KWTV, immediately after he came down off of the ladder. Let's hear what he had to say.
I just happened to be in that room. It's not the room I normally am in. Was working on a project. It happened, and I happened to was lucky I had a table to dive under.
What went through your mind? Where's the table to get a...
What's happening? You know, it's like it happened in slow motion.
What are some of the images that you, while you waited to be rescued, went through your mind?
Well, the same ones that are doing, you know, my entire staff of about 7 people was gone.
Just he and I and one lady are the only ones that walked out of our floor area.
Right.
Did you see any fatalities?
No,
there's
no floors.
Ceiling
Right.
to the basement.
There's nothing there.
Does it make any sense to you?
No, what?
It's like a dream still. It's not real.
If somebody did this, what could be their motive? To hurt that many innocent people.
Brian Espy, who's a veterinarian with the Department of Agriculture, asking who could be responsible for the deaths of all of those innocent people. Taking a look in his office, not seeing the rest of his staff of 7. They had disappeared as the building collapsed. And Scott Pelley was telling us just a moment ago that federal authorities are taking seriously potential threats against other federal facilities in Oklahoma City, one of them being the FBI building, which is quite close to the Murrah building. They have blocked off access to the parking lot with vehicles. And across the country, it appears as though the threat of further terrorist attacks on federal facilities is being taken seriously. The federal building in downtown Fort Worth has been evacuated solely as a precaution. No specific threat against that building. As well, the John F. Kennedy building in downtown Boston did receive a specific threat. It was evacuated, investigated, as was City Hall in downtown Boston. Both of those threats proved to be unfounded, even though they were specifically telephoned in. Could be the work of a copycat or somebody who's just trying to gain attention, see how they can shake things up. And as well, the federal building in downtown Wilmington, Delaware, was evacuated as well, solely as a precaution. Other than the threats in Boston, we have not heard about any specific threats against any other federal buildings anywhere in the United States. And you do have to remember as well that when this bomb went off shortly after 9 o'clock Oklahoma City time, shortly after 10 o'clock our time here on the East Coast, no threats had been received by any agencies. The most recent threat was phoned in to the FBI about a week ago, specific threats against the FBI. The FBI, though, as Scott Pelley and Jim Stewart have pointed out, is not housed in that building. Therefore, anybody who might have been targeting the FBI missed, or the threat was not specifically aimed at the FBI, and that the threat that was telephoned into the FBI was unconnected. Governor Frank Keating, governor of Oklahoma, is with us on the telephone now. Governor Keating, 3 hours and 31 minutes into this tragedy. Is there anywhere to look at this point for a source for this explosion?
Well, that's hard to say. Obviously, my